Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review. I'm Asbed Bedrossian and I'm here with Hovik Manucharyan. This show was recorded on April 16, 2023. Here are the major topics we'll touch on today. First, we're going to talk about the new HR Ombudswoman, Anahit Manasyan. Then we're going to talk about the Azeri attacks and infiltrations into Armenia. And finally, we're going to talk about the fact that Yerevan is going to be mayorless until the next 2023 elections in September. To talk about these issues, we have with us Kostanyan, who was an MP in the 7th convocation of the Armenian parliament with the Bright Armenia Party. She was also a member of the Standing Committee on Science, Education, Culture, Diaspora, Youth, and Sport. Prior to that, Ms. Kostanyan was a candidate for the member of the Yerevan Council of Elders, which is the Yerevan City Council, and was a founding member of the Bright Armenia Party. Hello and welcome, Ms. Kostanyan. Thank you for joining us on our show.
Hello, Anna.
Hi there. Thank you for inviting me.
Ms. Kostanyan, since this is your first time on our show, let us take a couple of minutes and introduce you to our listeners. Tell us a little bit about what drew you into politics for starters.
Oh, I always tell people when they ask me why I'm in politics and what interests me in politics. I always tell the story of my mother. For sure, she was my, let us say, inspiration for going into politics and becoming a member of parliament, because she was a former member of the regional committee at the Soviet time. And this way, I think she had a great influence on my decision of continuing her career and entering into politics. And later, all the situation in Armenia, the problem during decades, for example, education or other educational system. And I think this was the axis around which my mom in the past and already me was delegated to develop activities. So this is because education, I think, is the guarantee for the development of our country. And an educated citizen is the key for the progress of our state. I always knew that I had some responsibility towards my nation, towards my state, and I have to appeal to citizens' expectations. And with all this responsibility, I went into politics and was keen to solve all the issues that have been ignored over decades. I have a dream. I have a dream to see an Armenia full of opportunities, and if there I can support by my, let us say, modest or constructive activities, I'm just ready to do it. So, as I was a member of the Standing Committee on Science, Education, Culture, Diaspora, Youth, and Sport, the long-standing committee, I was to continue working on all those issues or reforms to create Armenia full of opportunities. I think this was and is my dream.
You were in the parliament, I believe, with Edmond Marukyan's Bright Armenia Party, correct? Lusavor Hayastan?
Yes.
What's your current relationship with that?
From the moment I stopped my activities in the party logic, I have absolutely no contact with them, especially politically. My activities within the framework of party was closed, and I, as the co-founder of the party, left the position, wishing them reasonable and principled political path, let us say so. I have no contact with them, and that's it.
Can you remind us, when did you leave the parliament and the party specifically? Was it in the 2021 elections? I forget the exact date.
Yes, exactly. It was after the elections, and shortly after Edmond Markan was appointed as a, you know,
super duper special ambassador. Is that what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I got it.
Still, I don't know what it means. Yes, still, I don't know what it means. But anyway, shortly after it, if I'm not mistaken, and if I remember it correctly, 2 days after the appointment, I announced that I'm leaving the party because I saw no perspectives to go with them political path, as it's not suited with my perspectives in politics and the future plans, because I have been and I am an oppositionist to this regime, the current government. I keep my principles.
Thank you. And lastly, you are currently still involved, obviously, in politics. I believe you're currently a member of the Hamakhmbum or Consolidation movement. Let us know a little bit about that movement. And I'm always, as I'm sure many others are, they're confused about the different entities that make up Hamakhmbum. For instance, there's a 5165 party. A lot of members from 5165 are members of Hamakhmbum. So what's the difference between Hamakhmbum and 5165?
So Hamakhmbum is a political movement, and I'm a board member of the Hamakhmbum political movement, that is to say the Consolidation. Hamakhmbum is about or was founded as a result of the unification or consolidation of a number of Armenian public and political figures, and one of them, 5165, which is a political party, and is one of the members of Hamakhmbum, or Consolidation movement. And in the course of time, about 2,000 people have joined the active movement, most of them representing other parties or public organizations, as a result of which there was a need to regulate the general principles of their cooperation. So the entities and people in the movement are guided by the principles that Hamakhmbum movement sets. For example, that is to say, the movement unites people, first of all, public and political organizations that can be fully involved in the movement, and each organization in the movement continues to operate in accordance with its mission and goals, to the extent, of course, that they do not conflict with the mission and goals of the Hamakhmbum movement or of their party. And if, for example, such contradictions arise, it's necessary to settle them through discussion. In case of impossibility, the sporting organization can stop its activity in the movement. Hamakhmbum movement is, first of all, a platform to implement joint political initiatives, and not only within the framework of the general goals that are set. And if you let me say those three goals that we have as an objective before us, they are as follows. First, to prevent the unconditional capitulation of the Republic of Armenia and the Republic of Artsakh, and the destruction of statehood. Our objective within the framework of this movement is to reject the anti-national regime of Armenia and to get the Republic of Armenia and the Republic of Artsakh out of the current and upcoming, or maybe possible, security crisis. So, what is Hamakhmbum? As I said, it's a political movement, but the core of the movement is the active members who form the active of the movement. So, and the active members of the movement are committed to serving those goals that I mentioned, and are obliged to be guided by the principles of the movement with their steps. They form and continuously update the strategy of the movement. We discuss and approve main initiatives, and the active group also elects the board of the movement, and now I am a board member of the movement. And to say to what extent I'm involved as a board member, the involvement in this political movement means full involvement in the political process by various activities, acts, for example, manifestations, protests against government and their current regime. But above all this, the movement stands for Artsakh, and it's founded, yes, for Artsakh. And the mission of it is to execute steps to overcome the existential challenges facing the Republic of Armenia and the Republic of Artsakh.
Okay, let's turn our attention to our topics. Last weekend was Easter, so we didn't do a show. So we'll try and touch on topics from the past couple of weeks. 3 months after the resignation of Christina Grigorian, the Civil Contract Party installed a new HR Ombudswoman, former Deputy Prosecutor Anahit Manasyan. Grigorian resigned in January 2023, and legally the government had 1 month to appoint a new candidate, but that went delinquent until earlier this month when they finally got around to it. Manasyan was elected on a strictly party line vote by the ruling party, pretty much as was expected. The parliamentary opposition first did not propose its own candidate, but later it came around to propose Edgar Azarian, but his hearings in the parliament did not go really well. What happened there, Anna? Can you discuss the situation?
Oh, now good things happened there during the committee hearings, because pro-government MPs verbally abused and threatened the opposition candidate, the candidate for the vacant post of Armenia's human rights defender, just for the criticism of their prime minister. I always say their prime minister and not our prime minister, Nikol Pashinyan's government. So the nomination of Edgar Azarian by the two opposition factions represented in the Armenian parliament was an ordinary act of parliamentary work to which governmental MPs, I call them so, as they unconditionally do what their political Papa Nikol Pashinyan says them. Their behavior, the behavior of those MPs, it was just unacceptable. Even if the nomination of Edgar Azarian was not acceptable for them, they just had to treat him, even the most unacceptable candidate for them, very tolerantly. First of all, because they are the people's representatives in the parliament, and not just ordinary or lawless men in the street. And that's exactly how they behave themselves, just like a street gang outlaw fighter.
Yeah.
And I just don't accept this behavior, because those people who before the 2018 Davat revolution criticized the past regime and their unacceptable government of all possible sins, they did the same or even more, even taking into account the causes of 2020 war. I blame them for this because they are the root of the cause of Armenia's current problems. So even though the meeting descended into chaos after the alliance, some by calling criminal regime that abuses all the human rights. These people, the party MPs, with their radical statements towards the opposition, just show that they are not tolerant to any oppositionist statement that can be heard in Armenian reality. And they called cut tongues and ear anyone who will dare to call our people. What does it mean? The representative of people says that they will cut tongues and ears. And this is an MP of Human Rights Standing Committee.
Yeah. And just to repeat what you said, Anna, you repeated that this is to be construed as a direct threat and not some kind of any emotional outburst. So it was pretty puzzling, the treatment that Mr. Ghazarian received. But I wanted to ask you, we know that at least for us, Mr. Arman Tatoyan has set a pretty high bar in terms of a human rights ombudsman. I wanted to ask you about the government's candidate. Is Manasyan well suited for this position? She's already been confirmed, but there was a lot of criticism that she has held a role as a deputy prosecutor general. Does she have the empathy to sort of go against the government, for instance, and protect those who have been abused or mistreated, potentially even when she was fulfilling the role of deputy prosecutor general?
I can't judge her professional abilities, but I can say for sure that she was elected by the ruling party members unconditionally, and being a prosecutor, it's another story whether she acted as a prosecutor objectively or professionally, but she can be objective now later on in the position of human rights defender. And yes, you're just right, Sir Arman Tatoyan sets the high bar for the Human Rights Ombuds Office, and he is recognized internationally, and he keeps his status as so. And after him, I just can't imagine anyone else to be so proactive and to keep fruitful activity as an ombudsman. But for me, let us say, in all this story, the most important core of human rights ombuds office is to ensure the continuity of effective cooperation with Artsakh ombudsman, because they both specifically must refer to the humanitarian situation in Artsakh and human rights of Artsakh people, and also international humanitarian law violations as a result of the blockade of the Lachin corridor by Azerbaijan. And it's very important that anyway, Ms. Manasyan is able to act or to work actively or proactively or productively to, let us say so, to continue joint activities of the two institutions in this direction, aiming at recording and targeting the continuous human rights violations by Azerbaijan. Yeah. I don't know whether she will succeed, but at least hope that she will act objectively and not in the logic of ruling party.
Manasyan's predecessor, Grigoryan, pretty much ignored all government abuses of power against its citizens. If you recall, last summer and last spring, when there were all those demonstrations and all those violations happened against demonstrators, nobody was ever prosecuted. Should we expect continuity of a similarly one-sided approach to HR accountability in Armenia under Manasyan?
Again, I must state that I have not so many expectations, because she was appointed and she was elected by the ruling party MPs. And I see, as when Grigoryan acted, she was constrained with the regime obligations. In this case, Manasyan also can be constrained with such conditions, and to expect more objectivity or to, for example, for both sides, I have not so much hope.
Anna, let's switch to a related topic, which is the selective use of justice by the Pashinyan regime that someone like an ombudsperson should be wary of and should be fighting against. Recently, there was a quarrel between two MPs in parliament. Hayastan Alliance MP Maher Sahakyan allegedly assaulted civil contract MP Vladimir Vartanyan. Sahakyan was obviously arrested and then released while the ruling party voted to strip him of parliamentary immunity, per Prosecutor General Anna Vartapetyan's request, or as some would say, instructions. And now hooliganism charges are being filed against Sahakyan. The vote was 65-0 on a party line in the same session that the civil contract voted in their ombudswoman, and with the same amount of votes. Our immediate interests here are not really what happened between Sahakyan and Vartanyan, but rather the uneven application of the law to ruling party functionaries as opposed to those who do not support the government. For example, the very recent case of Parliament Speaker Alen Simonian allegedly spitting on a citizen in public, special police guards roughing up protesting parents of fallen soldiers, or ruling party parliamentarians kicking opposition MPs, threatening them with physical harm, or the ruling party standing by corrupt judges, or the credible allegations by international organizations of state-sponsored cyber spying on Armenian journalists, and so on and so forth. None of the aforementioned issues have seen any action or follow-through by the Ministry of Justice, except when the issue comes to putting pressure on opposition members, or maybe even members of public who have exercised their free speech rights against the ruling regime. Then the response seems to be light speed. So the question I have is, can you share your thoughts on the state of justice in this administration, especially the workings of the Justice Department?
I just can say that the judiciary system, yes, they are directly commanded, yes, by the Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. And I don't even imagine where, for example, Anna Vartapetyan can act objectively or, for example, independently, or make some decisions in an independent manner, because they are the direct henchmen of this current regime. So expect much from them is just a naive imagination. It would be naive imagination from side. So the violence that occurred in the parliament, or this situation, I'm just to repeat what the parliament speaker, yes, did towards the public. Is just unacceptable. So I think that it's an ordinary situation in the parliament. In the nearest past, during the 2021, when I was in parliament in the 7th convocation of the National Assembly, just a situation just like it took place with the head of our, if you remember, Edmond Marukan, and no law enforcement.
No one was punished.
No one was punished, and no law enforcement. Yes, no law enforcement place at that time towards anyone who did this.
The past month has been another tough one for Armenia, as has been the unfortunate usual since the 44-day war. Counting from March 25, the Azerbaijani forces invaded the western hills in Artsakh proper to close off the so-called utility road, which has allegedly served as a bypass to the blockade. Then on April 2nd, Azerbaijani forces stopped a busload of citizens in a Russian peacekeeper convoy and searched and terrorized them. This is the first time that Azerbaijanis went directly against the Russian peacekeepers. Then last week on April 11, Azeris killed 4 Armenian soldiers as they tried to install new military posts on sovereign Armenian territory near the village of Ter. At the same time, 2 Azerbaijani soldiers infiltrated Sunik from the border with Nakhichevan, and one of them allegedly killed an Armenian citizen and gloated about it on Facebook Live video. So Anna, almost all of this is happening without any meaningful response from the Armenian government. All we've heard are warnings and complaints to Western entities that the worst may be yet to come. And Armenian soldiers, for instance, shot back at the Azeris on April 11 and killed 3 of their soldiers. But that is a rare occurrence these days in terms of actual resistance to the invaders. So to begin my questions, I would ask, is this government doing enough to keep its citizens and borders safe?
This is very sad situation, starting from 2020 44-day war, and later on Armenian, Azerbaijani border and those infiltrations into Armenia. This is gross violation of the ceasefire regime by the Azerbaijani armed forces towards the Republic of Armenia. These provocative actions of the Azerbaijani armed forces, I must say, continuous provocative actions of the Azerbaijani armed forces show that, yes, we are not safe. And as these attacks and infiltration into Armenia goes on, we say that Armenian government does not hold in his power to make safe, at least to make safe, the borders of the Republic of Armenia. And they blame everyone, the East, the West, the Russians, the Americans, maybe the Europe, but not themselves. So the government does not do everything in its power to keep Armenian borders safe and to keep, first of all, our citizens. And the last event that took place in Sunik region, that Azerbaijani servicemen entered and freely moved within the towns or the communities and killed Armenian people, shows that, yes, we're not safe. We're not safe. And after 2024, 44-day war in Artsakh, and now on the borders of Armenia, within unstable geopolitical conditions, we have no influence in at this moment. In creation of strong or safe or at least stable situation, and with no clear perspective of the future. And all those challenges that we face, we still have very primitive problems that are not saved by this government. And with all these, they just do steps that focus not rather on efficiency, but on primitive, issues that exist in Armenian reality. We can't have any good perspective, future perspective with this government. And if we continue to adapt to all this situation, we just can know what else we can face, what other challenges we can face in the future.
Yeah.
And the only way to go out of this is to form reasonable government, maybe with the help of future electoral process. If I'm not mistaken, in September, the elections of the Yerevan Council members will take place. I hope this will be the first phase of the changing of the current regime. At least I hope so.
The civil contract MP, Anahit Kostanyan, made an interesting statement last week. Instead of his usual slamming of journalists and disparaging of the opposition, this week that job went to Edward Asrian. He said that it was the Armenian military's response that stopped Azeri advances on April 11, leaving alone that he was actually telling our strategic partner Russia that he didn't care what they thought, that whatever they did to stop the military incident. I haven't heard Kocharyan say anything positive about Armenia's armed forces, and this guy is the chair of the Defense and Security Committee in Parliament. Anna, do you think that Andranik Kocharyan's language introduces any new aspects to Pashinyan's policy of defending our borders, or is this nothing?
The defensive and evasive answers of Asaryan journalists asked him what happened on the borders, gives us the idea, yes, that something maybe has changed the policy. It's very terrible and fearful to see how those people treat the state, the whole state, and the international relationship with other countries, especially with our strategic partner, and it doesn't prompt us good things to happen in the nearest.
Mm-hmm. After April 11, Pashinyan hinted that some of the response by the Armenian side was inadequate and did not conform to his instructions and his requirements. Asaryan was defensive, like you said, when journalists asked him what had happened or what hadn't happened. Do you have any ideas what Pashinyan was talking about? What was he alluding to when he said some things weren't done?
I think that it was not just alluding, was discrediting the Armenian armed forces and placing the blame on the armed forces of Armenia. That is to say, he never sees his fault in this situation and places the blame to anyone else, and in this case, to the of Armenia. The messages coming from the ruling party members of parliament are not so encouraging, and also the messages coming from the prime minister, at least, are that we will have unstable situation on borders of a long time in the future. And in this case, the only way out of see just the changing of the regime. And because they promise us not a good future and not a productive international relationship, not only with West, not only with East, but any other country.
Anna, in one of your previous answers, you alluded to the upcoming municipal elections of Yerevan being a step towards the opposition coming to power. A month ago, on March 17, Hracha Sargsyan resigned as the mayor of Yerevan after weeks of speculation that he would do so, in order to open the way for Tigran Avinyan to become the leading contender for the mayorship. Avinyan has previously been a deputy prime minister and is seen as a wheeler and dealer, if I may say so, in this government, and is one of the, I guess, liaisons to the business sector for Pashinyan. Now, by law, the Council of Elders should have met earlier this week to begin the process of replacing the mayor, but the ruling party announced instead that they will not elect a new mayor and will wait until the regularly scheduled elections at the end of this year. So the effective acting mayor is now essentially Tigran Avinyan, who is seen in every single opportunity to cut ribbons, whether it's like a pothole being repaired or a new building being consecrated and so forth. So Anna, as you have been a candidate for the member of the Yerevan City Council and probably have a good idea of the politics brewing behind the September upcoming elections, Can you describe how the politics of the Council of Elders, or what is called Avakani in Armenian, will play out, and what residents can expect in September?
So, as you said, the city, Yerevan city, won't have a mayor until September. But actually, Armenian is rules, yes, that he as a mayor, and he actually has started his campaign.
It appears that his campaign for mayor started right after the Surmalu blast, when he visited the blast site and announced that he is the
not even
candidate.
after, during.
Well, I mean, yeah, during the rescue operation.
He went to one of the sites and announced that in a year he's going to be running.
Yes, exactly. He started his campaign right a situation in Yerevan that took place last year. But all the steps that he does, I believe, lowers his chances and not boosts his chances, because they don't turn to global issues within the city, and they do some very primitive stuff like, I don't know, buying or cutting the old trees. And I don't believe that this most important issues in our country that we have to stick our attention to. But anyway, I think that day by day until September have very lower ratings, and according to some inquiry are done within the citizens of Yerevan, we see that the citizens of Yerevan don't see him as the mayor. In case all those parties or political entities that enter into campaign must lead the campaign and not campaign city issues. And again, yes, despite being installed by the council leadership, we first must decide whether Armenians' mayoral bid and hopes, Pashinyan's imagination or Pashinyan's party, and the current Yerevan Council, Yerevan Council members that yes, ruled or directly do Pashinyan's instructions, really after elections will elect the mayor, Armenian, the mayor of Yerevan. And we also must take into consideration whether Racha Sargsyan's or Armenian's predecessor will enter into competitive campaign. And I think that Marutan's chances to be the next mayor are more than Armenian. So I think that the September will be a period of hot political campaign, and after it, it will be clarified if the opposition will have the chances to take the city, and if they succeed, it means the opposition will have the chance to take the power in general, the power of the country.
Yeah. On the issue of the opposition, there are many who lament the fact that the opposition, at least today, does not seem united. And going into the September elections in Yerevan, there are two thoughts. One is one school of thought says that everyone should unite behind a single opposition candidate or set of candidates for the Council of Elders, and the opposition should basically act united. And there is another school of thought that says, as long as individual opposition parties or movements are, they are able to secure enough number of votes, then they can form a coalition in the future. And it's not as important to have a single unified candidate. What are your thoughts about this? And what is the risk? Do you see a risk if the opposition does not go into the Yerevan elections of September 2023 without having a unified platform?
Actually, I have doubts whether the opposition will succeed or not, but the perspective that I have is that naturally the opposition must unite a dream team and a unified candidate to ensure large representation in the Council of Elders, and later on to make coalitions or alliances to win this regime. If not, I don't have much that we or other entities of opposition will. So I think that the only way to win the current regime is to have a unified candidate, or just to form a. This is my perspective, or this is what I see the upcoming election.
All right. Well, let's wrap up our topics here. I'd like to ask each of you if there's been something on your mind in the past week that you would like to talk about, that you'd like to share with us. Anna, is there anything on your mind that you would like to share?
Oh, that has come to my mind is that with all unstable political situation in Armenia and the challenges that are facing now and we will face in the nearest future, I believe. I just want to direct some to our citizens or to all the Armenians from all over the world. It's very hard around Armenia and around Artsakh, and if we don't thoroughly understand to what extent are the problems in our country, in our two states, two Armenian states, and that we are facing existential issues. We want to have a distinct vision future, and I just want to call everyone, Armenia and Artsakh and the diaspora, to all Armenians, just consolidated, to be unified, to overcome all. This is what came to my mind. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Hovik, something on your mind?
I would like to talk about the top issue in the last 2 days in Armenian media, which is the burning of the flag of the genocidal regime of Azerbaijan at the weightlifting championships in Yerevan. A member of the audience basically, snatched the flag and proceeded to burn it, and only to be arrested. This was followed up by public expressions of outrage and guilt by the members of the Pashinyan regime. But to me, it was a sign that there is still hope for Armenians, that the capitulation that's being forced on us will not be swallowed so easily. And in the end, it's just expression of free speech. So I don't know why there's all this commotion about sportsmanship and whatnot. However, I do want to say that this is the third or fourth day that the media is focusing on this, and it is becoming unhealthy because besides this flag issue, we have many other issues to focus on, to concentrate on, considering that just 4 days ago we had more losses on the border, and there are continuous reports of new provocations and aggressions by Azerbaijan every day. Obviously, Azerbaijan wants to focus on this. They are gearing up the international media. There's international coverage of this. Unfortunately, the Pashinyan media is also riding this bandwagon and trying to play this issue and try appeal to the fear of people. What would the world think? What would happen to our sports teams and so forth? Frankly, I couldn't care, but by continuing to focus on these topics, we are forgetting many of the other topics that should be focused on. So if you have an opposition mindset, I would urge you to let this flag issue go. It was a net positive for me, but we have many more important issues to focus on.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there for today. Thank you, Anna, very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
I express my gratitude. Thank you for this opportunity.
All right, that's our show. We hope you found our Week in Review helpful. We invite your feedback and your suggestions. You can find us on most social media and podcast platforms. The links are in our show notes. Talk to you next week.